Hey, what's up everyone? This is Sterling, and oh my god, it's finally here. Obi-Wan Kenobi has officially dropped on Disney Plus, and I'm going to break it down for you. Today we're going to be breaking down episode 1, and that being said, let's get right into the setting of the episode. Okay, so for the setting, Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to take place primarily on Tatooine about 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. In this episode, it's pretty much just on the planet of Tatooine where Obi-Wan is trying to live a normal life and where he's trying to hide from the Empire and keep his name dead. To the rest of the galaxy, Obi-Wan Kenobi is dead, and he wants to keep it that way. And we see that through the majority of the episode. What's pretty great is we get a nice little recap of Revenge of the Sith, and frankly, the entire prequel trilogy, to keep everybody up to date. Even though, personally, my preparation for this show was I watched the whole Skywalker saga, including the sequels. But that's just me. So, with that being said, let's get right into the nitty-gritty and the breakdown of the actual show. Okay, so the first shot that we get of the episode is on Coruscant, and for a second, it really didn't hit with me why it was opening on Coruscant. So I was confused, and I was like, "Oh, why is it happening on Coruscant?" And then I remembered, "Oh, that's why we're about to see some death." And the first character that is introduced is this Padawan right here, and I think that's interesting because this Padawan gets a little bit of very subtle attention at the very beginning of the episode, and I'll explain why. But as we zoom out and zoom into what's going on, you see a master teaching Padawans how to use the Force, how to meditate, and then the door opens, and you see two 501st clones that the master has to ignite her green lightsaber, and she kills both of them, as this is a huge shock to all the Jedi and younglings that are going on. They step into the hallway, you see a blue lightsaber wielding Jedi get killed by two more clones, where the master readily takes care of both of them, and eventually the master ends up dying, as most Jedi do end up dying during Order 66, which is what's taking place right here. And then in this shot, you see that Padawan that we zoomed in on, that we established in the establishing shot of the show. We see all of the younglings kind of look to her, and the camera shot almost zooms in on her as the Padawans just run through the temple, as we see all of these Jedi being extinguished. And it's really sad almost, because you see lightsaber after lightsaber after lightsaber go out, as did happen with almost every Jedi during Order 66. Then we get to Tatooine, 10 years later. I believe that the city shown here is Anchorhead, where I believe Anchorhead was closer to Luke than Mos Eisley was, because when Obi-Wan wanted to take him to Mos Eisley in Episode 4 to go to Alderaan, Luke said that he could take him as far as Anchorhead, but that's about it, which I believe just means that it's a closer city, and I believe that's where Obi-Wan's living, since he has to keep an eye on Luke for his exile on Tatooine. We then get a shot of all the citizens and the sprawling city, and we see the silhouette of the Inquisitor's ship. It almost looks like a Pac-Man that's eating all of these citizens, as the Inquisitors are like a Gestapo type bully that the whole galaxy has to deal with. Then as the vehicle lands, the door opens, and we see our three Inquisitors of the episode. Obviously leading is the Grand Inquisitor. On his left is Reva, and on the right is the fifth brother. Now, Reva is the most interesting one to me, because I believe, and this is just a fan theory, but I've also talked to a couple of my friends about it, and a lot of people think that that Padawan opening is Reva at the very beginning, which would explain her vehement and aggressive hatred for the Jedi. As all Inquisitors and all Darkseid users hate the Jedi, Reva seems to have just a little bit more aggression towards it. So it could just be the fact that she saw all of the Jedi, and Obi-Wan specifically let her down. Obi-Wan and Yoda didn't show up until long after most of the Jedi were dead in the Jedi Temple, and she may have blamed him for that, especially watching Anakin just mow down her friends, people that she almost considered family. But we get the Grand Inquisitor, who I believe looks so much better in the show, and with the different angles and maybe just some different effects touch-ups. We see, the red marks on his forehead clear, the lines on his forehead clear, and especially the marks under his eyes. We see him snarl with his teeth and his yellow eyes. He looks great, just like he did in Star Wars Rebels. And then we get a close-up of the fifth brother, who probably looks the least like his animated adaptation, but still looks fantastic and menacing as always. And then as we see the Inquisitors walk through the streets of what I believe to be Anchorhead, they stop at a saloon where they believe a Jedi to be being hid, and the Grand Inquisitor interrogates the saloon owner. And you see a close-up as we get to see his sharp teeth, his yellow eyes. And as the Grand Inquisitor monologues, he says that the Jedi hunt themselves because the Jedi code is like an itch that they just cannot ignore, leaving them vulnerable. And Reva, being the aggressive Inquisitor that she is, picks up a knife and throws it at the saloon owner, and the knife stops midair almost before it hits the saloon owner. And then a shot pans over to a man sitting at a table, and he's using the Force to stop it, evoking what the Grand Inquisitor just said, where the Jedi code is like an itch. They hunt themselves. They have to help people. And eventually, a little chase ensues where the Inquisitors are stopping the Jedi from running out of the building, and eventually he gets past the fifth brother, and Reva stops him using her lightsaber. Now, she almost kills him. The Inquisitors want to take them to interrogate them, to torture them, to turn them into an Inquisitor. But Reva almost kills him by swinging her lightsaber through him, and the Grand Inquisitor stops her using the Force, and it burns on the side of the Jedi, and eventually the Grand Inquisitor force pushes Reva away from the Jedi, allowing him to escape, and we pan into this giant 5-finned sand shark in the Dune Sea. And we see an encampment harvesting the meat from the fish. And that's when we get our first shot of the man of the hour, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor. This is the first time we've seen him in 17 years as a live-action Obi-Wan Kenobi. So this is a huge moment, and it almost made me tear up a little bit seeing Obi-Wan, seeing Ewan there in real life. It was a really beautiful shot. And we see him cutting a meat just like every other employee because he's trying to live a normal life away from the Empire. That's why he's on an Outer Rim world. He cuts off a little piece for his Eopie that he was writing in Revenge of the Sith, and he feeds it to the Eopie later on. After Obi-Wan gets to his Eopie in town, he takes his Eopie out, rides on the Dune Sea to his little makeshift place that he's got. It's a little rock formation out of the sand, and it's like a little wavy rock cave area as he walks in. And outside of it is a little protocol droid antenna that lets him know if there are people in his little encampment that he's made. It's just a way for him to keep aware of the situation. After he walks into his encampment, we see him make just a little stew, but it's interesting because it's like a little powder, and then when you add water and heat, it kind of bubbles up into this edible stew, and it kind of evokes the little bread roll that Rey was eating back in The Force Awakens. So it was interesting to see that little Easter egg there. And then Obi-Wan goes outside to eat his food, and Tika, a Jawa that he trades with, comes in with her little cart of trinkets, of things, of parts for Obi-Wan to trade with, and Obi-Wan says, "Do you have it?" And Tika says, "Do you have the credits?" And Tika gives him a toy T-16 Skyhopper that we see Luke Skywalker playing with all the way back in A New Hope. So that's a really, really cool, I think, a kind of a missable detail, because we see Luke playing with it almost 45 years ago in his little shop area on the Lars homestead. So I just thought that was really cool. It's a neat little Easter egg. After Tika leaves, we shoot to a nighttime cut where Obi-Wan is trying to sleep, and he's having flashbacks of Anakin and Padme and everything that transpired during Revenge of the Sith that brought him here to this point. We see Anakin screaming, "I hate you," and that shoots Obi-Wan awake. He calls out for Qui-Gon Jinn, but since he's blocked himself off from the Force, he probably can't commune with Qui-Gon too well. Then we cut to the next day where Obi-Wan takes his Eopie and rides to a little rock formation just outside of the Lars homestead where he watches Luke and Owen from afar, and Luke runs away and escapes from Owen to pretend like he's flying on a ship on the homestead. And he essentially is there all day just watching him, making sure he's okay. And at night, he leaves that rock formation and he's stopped by the Jedi. I believe his name was Mari. He says, "Master, Master," and he's trying to evoke Obi-Wan out of him, but Obi-Wan isn't having any of it. Obi-Wan's trying to tell Nari to go away, and Nari insists, and Obi-Wan eventually tells Nari to bury his lightsaber in the sand and do what he's doing, essentially. Live a normal life. Hide from the Empire. That's all we can do. And Nari, disappointed, he asks Obi-Wan, "What happened to you?" Because Obi-Wan was such a big name in the Jedi Council, among the Jedi just in general. Nari probably being a Padawan learner when Order 66 happens. This is extremely disappointing for him. After this encounter, we cut to Alderaan, where we meet little young Leia. But originally, the first kid that we see is not Leia. It's one of her friends, probably. And then we cut to Leia running through the forest with her little droid Lola as she climbs a tree and starts looking at the ships leaving and guessing which one the ship is. Like, what kind of ship is it? Who's on it? That kind of thing. Because she's adventurous. She doesn't want to be a senator. She doesn't want to be a princess. She wants to just be Leia and experience the galaxy. Same thing that we saw with Luke back on Tatooine when he was pretending like he was riding a ship. And then we see Leia's mom come to scold her and take her inside because her family members are coming, and we zoom back into the forest a little bit as we see Leia and her mom go into their palace, and we see a kidnapper in the forest looming. Cutting back to Tatooine, we get Owen throwing the T-16 Skyhopper toy back at Obi-Wan's feet, telling him to leave him alone. And Obi-Wan, he just wants Luke to experience the galaxy, and Owen doesn't want anything of it. His experience with Anakin, seeing how angry and how bad he was and seeing what he turned out to be, he doesn't want any part of that life. And Obi-Wan just wants to show Luke the outside world, so when it comes time to train him, he's got a little bit of experience for himself. We see Owen leaning up against the scaffolding after Obi-Wan says that he cares about Luke. He wants to know how he's doing. And Owen tells him, you don't care about Luke. You just want to know if he's showing signs of the Force. And Obi-Wan says, well, yeah, when it comes time, it's time for him to train. And Owen, again, doesn't want anything about it. And then all of a sudden, the Inquisitor ship shows up, where Obi-Wan goes to hide back in the stables. Owen goes back out with the crowd of people, where we see Reva and the fifth brother start interrogating everybody, asking where the Jedi is. At first, I thought they were talking about Obi-Wan, but no, they're talking about Nari. They're still looking for him. And eventually, Reva puts her attention on Owen and asks him if he's seen the Jedi, where Owen kind of glances over to where Obi-Wan is. Reva didn't pick up on it, but he says no. Reva threatens Owen's family, where you get a snarling look from the fifth brother. Eventually, the fifth brother uses his authority and tells Reva to step away, and they'll go look for the Jedi. And then we see Obi-Wan hiding back in the stables, where he comes back out to thank Owen for not revealing him. And Owen says, I didn't do it for you. Where clearly he was doing it for Luke, because he knows if Obi-Wan is found, then Owen's going to be interrogated. They're eventually going to find Luke, which leads to Vader finding Luke, and nobody wants that. Then we get to the fifth brother interrogating Reva in an alleyway, telling her not to overstep her bounds again, and Reva hints that she wants Kenobi again, and the fifth brother even says, we've been looking for him for 10 years. The man is probably dead. And Reva shrugs him off and walks away. And then we cut back to Alderaan, where we see Leia forced to attend a family get-together where she tells off her snobby cousin in the most sassy Leia way possible. Here we really see how she not only relates to Padme and Anakin, but also to Bail Organa, her adopted father. Then we see her run through the forest only to be intercepted by the kidnappers from earlier after a little chase scene ensues where she is finally captured and taken away. Then we cut back to Tatooine, where we see a hologram of Bail and Breha Organa pleading for Obi-Wan to go rescue their daughter, almost evoking the scene back in A New Hope, where you see the hologram of Leia saying, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And they don't quite say the exact line, but That's essentially the vibe that they're giving off. And then we cut to Obi-Wan saying, I'm not the same person you knew 10 years ago. I've lost. He's about as demoralized as he could possibly get up to this point. And he basically tells them, no, find somebody else. And then we cut back to Anchorhead, where you see Nari dead, hung up on an archway. And you see the look on Obi-Wan's face. And it's sad. Nari didn't take Obi-Wan's advice. He tried, he got found, and he was killed. And, this probably demoralizes Obi-Wan even more than he was before, which is really sad when you really think about it. Then we cut back to Obi-Wan's little encampment where the astromech antenna pops up and shines red, which tells him that somebody else is there. And Obi-Wan proceeds with caution, goes in, and you see a hooded figure, and that happens to be Bail Organa. He flew all the way to Tatooine to plead Obi-Wan one more time, which eventually he succeeds, and Obi-Wan says that he'll do it. He'll go rescue Leia. And then we cut back to the kidnappers on their ship, and we see a hologram of Reva talking to them, which signifies that she's the one that hired them. And then she evokes the Grand Inquisitor's monologue from earlier where he says that the Jedi hunt themselves. This is that being put into practice yet again for the second time of this episode, where she says that Bail's going to hire Obi-Wan to go find her because they worked together in the Clone Wars. Then we cut back to the Dune Sea on Tatooine, where Obi-Wan's riding his Eope. He puts him down and starts digging up his lightsabers, evoking what he told Nari earlier, bury your lightsabers in the middle of the desert. That's literally what he did. It wasn't a figure of speech. He literally buried his lightsabers in the middle of the desert. Also, people that didn't like that Rey buried her lightsabers in the middle of the desert. They're really quiet right now. Anyway, Obi-Wan digs up his lightsabers, and I get a little bit emotional when he opens the box. You see that he buried it right next to Anakin's lightsaber, almost like he's burying Obi-Wan and Anakin, almost like that was his version of letting go of that era of his life. And you see him look up, and he's ready for his adventure. We cut to the spaceport, probably in Mos Eisley at this point, where we see a hesitant Obi-Wan, because just like he was telling Bail Organa, he's there to protect the boy, to watch over the boy. And Bail convinces him by saying Leia's just as important, and Obi-Wan knows this. So we see him give the device to the counter, and we see Obi-Wan's lightsaber as we cut to black. All right, guys, and that was the end of the breakdown for Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 1. I hope that you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and I'm pretty sure I got all the major details, major plot points of this episode. There wasn't a whole lot that went through, so it was a little bit hard to pick through the very, very specifics and nitty-gritty, but there's definitely more in Episode 2, so stay tuned. But to thank everybody for watching this video up to this point, I wanted to give my thoughts, share my reviews, and I'll give a little rating out of 10, and I'm going to do this for each episode going forward. Personally, I would rate the episode about a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, it was a little bit slow, but it's setting up the setting, it's setting up what's going on, and I thought that it was really awesome to see Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa. I thought that it really brought a lot of emotions out to see Ewan McGregor back on the live action screen today in 2022, as it was 17 years ago that he was last on the big screen. So that was really cool. It brought a lot of emotions to see the lightsabers, Anakin and Obi-Wan's lightsaber buried in the sand. And I thought it was awesome to see the Inquisitors. I thought Reva was great. I thought the Fifth Brother, seeing him on live action was great. I thought the Grand Inquisitor stole the show every time he was there. And I can't wait to see what happens in Episode 2. So stay tuned, guys. Drop your ratings out of 10 in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the breakdown and if there was anything that I missed. And I hope you guys have a great day. May the Force be with you, and see you guys in the next one.